Hi folks, welcome to my channel. If you're new around here, I'm Sarah and I upload videos twice a week on all things art related. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how I drew this portrait of an older man's face, including my method for drawing realistic wrinkles, facial hair and how I add texture to his skin while still maintaining a range of values and contrast. The pastels I'll be using today are the Faber-Castell Pitt pastel pencils for the more detailed areas, as well as a black pan pastel for the larger area of his hat. I'm also going to be testing out the Pan Pastel Colourless blender, so if you want to see how that works and what I think of it, then stay tuned. Don't forget, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you want to see what exciting things I've got in store for next week, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as I upload a new video. But before I begin laying any pastel down, I made an outline sketch in pencil on a piece of maize coloured pastel matte paper and taped around the outside of my drawing with Scotch magic tape just to keep a nice crisp edge. If you want to see my first impressions of the pastel matte paper, I'll put a link to that video in the card above. Back to today's drawing, and if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know that I love drawing eyes and often choose to mark those in first. With pastels though, it's a good idea to work from the top down and from left to right if you're right-handed, or right to left if you're left-handed. This is because pastels can be prone to smudging, so working in this way minimises the chances of your hand picking up any pastel and spoiling your artwork. In this portrait, the top left portion of the drawing was largely taken up by the old man's black hat, which, being a larger area, I decided would be more effectively filled in using a black pan pastel. Pan pastels are very soft, highly pigmented artist grade pastels that you usually apply with soft sponges or applicators like I'm doing here. I have used them in the past and been really impressed with how smoothly they lay down, but for some reason today they didn't seem to lay down as smoothly as I'd wanted. This may have been because I didn't add enough pigment onto the paper, as I was trying to keep the initial layer fairly light so as not to lose the stitching detail on the hat or cover over any of my pencil sketch around the contour of the man's ear and face. I changed from the wedge applicator to a small plastic handled applicator to add more pan pastel, which gave a smoother, more even consistency, and finally went in with my pastel pencil to get a more controlled and even outline to his face. Then it was time to further smooth out the hat, which I did using a paper blending stump. Blending the pastels with a blending stump helps to cover up the tooth of the paper, but can result in your colours diffusing and becoming less vibrant, so I often go back in with another layer of pastel to get back the colour and value that I was after. So with that side of the hat done, it got me thinking about the Pan Pastel Colourless blender, which I'd bought recently but was going to include in a new art haul video coming up soon. But my curiosity got the better of me and I decided to see if there was much difference in the application of the black pan pastel if I used the colourless blender underneath, so I'll be showing you that when we get to that side of the drawing. For the old man's face, I began just by mapping out some of the main features, creases and wrinkles using a dark brown pastel pencil. I then used my blending stump, working from the top of his face down to soften some of those lines without losing all the definition. If you want to see more real-time footage of how I go about drawing lines, creases and wrinkles with a step-by-step tutorial, I have got a Draw With Me video on this channel, which I'll link in the card above. Alternatively, you can change the speed of the video in YouTube settings. This portrait did take me about 4 hours to complete, which is why I had to speed it up quite a bit. For me though, when working with pastels, the time really flies by and I love the whole process. I really like how you can pretty quickly cover larger areas with blocks, sticks or pans using sponges and various application methods, but then equally effectively render fine details to give really realistic results. With pastels, unlike other mediums, you also have the flexibility of being able to layer light colours over dark colours, which is really great for adding highlights and those lighter values at the end of a piece of artwork. So I'm moving down the face now, and for some reason I decided to leave the eyebrows at this stage. I did begin to fill in the eyes though, which I was a bit worried about as they were so dark and there wasn't much detail looking at my reference picture. The reference picture, by the way, is from Pixabay, and I'll leave a link to that in the description box if you want to go and check it out or have a go at this portrait yourself. What I often do though, if I'm not too sure about part of a drawing, is I either have a break so I can look at it again with fresh eyes after a cup of tea, or I'll concentrate my attention to another part of the drawing and come back later to have another go. Now moving down the face again, and I've added in some more pinky purpley colours to the cheeks. I'm also trying to keep a check on my values, making sure the area under the eyes is darker than the cheeks to help add depth and form. A lot of this man's face was overshadowed by his hat, but the reference picture really stuck out to me because of the amount of character in his face, and whilst there were a lot of dark values, there was also plenty of contrast in the lighter, brighter areas at the sides of his face too. Now, another thing I did want to mention about pastels at this stage is that it doesn't matter if you don't have a full set of colours or exactly the right skin tone you're after. One of the lovely things about pastels is that you can mix them and layer them to get the colour you need. Skin tones come in a whole range of different colours, and with this piece I had to do exactly that. I had to layer pinks over browns, reds over browns, and so on to get the right shade I was after. I even added some purple on the areas under the eyes, so don't be afraid to try things out. You can always lift or lighten the colour by simply applying a kneaded eraser. Now there was just his left ear to complete before I went in and added the other side of the hat. As before, I put in an initial layer of pastel before blending and smoothing the area out with my blending stump. I wanted to get this ear pretty much rendered before adding in the black pastel for his hat, as this ear had a lot more light falling on it than the other ear, and I didn't want to risk obscuring it with black pastel. So now it's time to try out this Pan Pastel colourless blender. This appears as an off-white coloured pan and can either be laid down on the paper before adding pastel, or it can be mixed with the coloured pastel before applying to the paper. This product claims to add transparency and increase flow without changing the colour of the pastel you're mixing it with. I applied it using one of the Sofft Applicators directly onto my paper. I wasn't really sure how much to add, but decided on a fairly even layer all over the area to be blended. It feels quite creamy to the touch and is quite easy to see on this coloured paper. But would it work? So now the moment of truth. I'm applying the black pan pastel again as before using the Sofft Applicator tool. And straight away I did notice a difference. The black pastel did really seem to lay down a lot easier with the blender underneath compared to the other side, and I don't think I applied any more pigment than last time, as I wanted to make the comparison as fair as possible. I didn't use the triangular shaped applicator tool this time though, but this was mainly because there was a smaller area to cover this time than the other side of the hat. I also didn't notice any lightening of the black pigment after being laid down on top of the colourless blender. So as far as I can tell on this limited test, the claims do seem to hold up. It definitely felt easier to lay the black over the colourless blender, so flow had improved. And it did appear not to affect the saturation of the black, so it was transparent. But let me know in the comments if you've tried this before and what your experience has been with it. I think I'd like to try it again to give it a more thorough review, and I'm also interested to know if it works under other pastels as well, so like the pastel pencils for example. So now it's time to start on the mouth area, and being that this man has a moustache and a beard, there wasn't much mouth to draw, but it was important to extend the skin colour above and below the lip line, as quite a lot of the skin could still be seen under and through the facial hair here. And despite my initial concerns about getting this bit right, it was surprisingly one of the quicker parts of the drawing and a lot of fun. You can start to see what I mean about this man's face being full of character. Once I put in some darker skin tones, I began to layer over the darkest colours of the beard and moustache, and alternated again between laying down pastel, blending and adding further layers until I got the colour and values right. There is also quite a lot of fine white hairs mixed in here too, but I wanted to add that with a sharp pencil at the end to keep the white really crisp and bright. Now at this point of the drawing I do tend to jump around a bit, and I try to look at the piece as a whole and not just as separate sections. This means checking that the values are right as well as the colours and the details. I also finally finished those eyebrows off and darkened up some of the area around the eyes. I also remembered to put a piece of paper under my hand at this stage to avoid smudging the drawing right at the end. So finally the last step was to add some texture to the skin. This skin was quite rough and the pores were quite visible in parts as well. I added small dots of dark brown pastel in the shadow areas and did the same on the pinker areas of the cheeks and nose, but used a lighter brown. The trick is not to apply these marks too uniformly or evenly, and to blend each dot out slightly with a blending stump so that they look as part of the skin and they look natural. Now the fine details, so the areas like the fine hairs and that kind of thing, were really easy to achieve with these Faber-Castell Pitt pencils because they can be sharpened to a really nice fine point. But if you haven't got these pencils and you've only got stick pencils, for example, you can substitute in sharp coloured pencils for details like the white fine hairs. So don't feel like you can't achieve this sort of look, you just have to substitute in what you do have. So a few last touches and a bit of lifting up with a kneaded eraser and this piece was complete, and I was quite pleased with how it turned out. It was a lot of fun and I hope you enjoyed it too. If you did like it, then please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. I'm really excited about next week's videos, so if you want to make sure you don't miss out on those, why not hit the bell icon as well to be notified as soon as I upload. I hope you all have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and I'll see you soon. Bye.